About to record. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our session entitled TikvahNet, Keeping Our Communities Engaged Virtually During and After the Pandemic. I'm Howard Blass, and my co-presenter is Maya Albin, and we are part of Camp Ramah, the National Ramah Tikvah Network. We'll tell you all about that in a moment. Next slide, please. So we want to talk with you first about Jewish camping. So Maya and I are Jewish. We've been connected with Jewish camping for many, many years, but not as long as Jewish camping has been in existence. Jewish camping started in 1893 with the goal of really taking city-dwelling immigrant children and giving them an opportunity to get out of the city. At that time, Jewish children weren't really welcome in Christian camps. There are many organizations which run Jewish camps. Some of them are part of Jewish movements, Orthodox, Conservative, and Reform. Some are community organizations, some are more local. And the idea was to help kids escape the city, to preserve Jewish tradition, and to really help them forge a Jewish identity. Next slide, please. So Jewish camping, I don't know if this exists in other camping movements, but it is, it's very, very stimulating. Every type of activity you can imagine, dancing, singing, all the different arts, all kinds of sports, many things you wouldn't have an opportunity to do in the city, swimming, campwide activities like color wars. Sometimes kids go on hikes or camping trips for one or many nights, campwide outings, amusement parks, ball games. Really, it's just a Jewish, an informal Jewish learning and living environment, meals, Sabbath experience, and more. Next slide, please. So what is so beneficial about Jewish camping? So basically, as I said, it's really a natural Jewish, all-encompassing living environment with all the activities that I mentioned in the previous slide. And as a result, campers and staff form lifelong friendships, a sense of belonging. It really enhances Jewish identity. And it's really a chance to push yourself, to be out of your comfort zone, to try climbing that climbing tower that you might have been afraid to do, to jump into seawater, which is the deepest water, to experiment with relationships with other people, and also to be away from your parents, to navigate living in it, to sharing a shower and a bunking area with 12 other boys or girls. Next slide, please. So thus far, I've spoken about camping in general. And as I said, Maya and I work for the National Ramah Commission, or more affectionately known as Camp Ramah. And Camp Ramah has served tens of thousands of people in its 75 years of existence. Again, within organized Judaism, there are different movements, Orthodox, Conservative, and Reform. And our movement is the conservative movement. And we have a network of camps, overnight camps, day camps throughout the US and Canada, and even in Israel. We'll show you a map in a couple of slides. And people who have, we even on our National Ramah website, we even have an ongoing tally of people who met their spouses at camp. And that list is probably way into the hundreds at this point. Next slide, please. So Maya and I have spent most of our camping career working in what's called the Tikvah program. And Tikvah means hope in Hebrew. And here's the story about Tikvah, okay? In the late 1960s, this couple in the slide with me, that's a much younger me from a number of years ago, this couple, Herb and Barbara Greenberg, they were special education teachers in Long Island, New York. They had no personal connection to disability other than their professional work. They had the idea to include people with disabilities in an overnight summer camp. And as you can imagine, in the late 60s, this was not high up on the agenda, including people with disabilities. People said, it's going to ruin the camp. The normal people will leave. It'll ruin the finances. Camp Ramah is very big on Hebrew language. It would lower the level of Hebrew language. it would just ruin the overall structure of the camp. And they persisted. And one director said, we'll take it because this is an important Jewish value. Why should camp exist if not for including all types of people? And now this seems so obvious, and we're very proud that so many Jewish camps, so many non-Jewish camps include people with disabilities. But in our camping movement, we say it's only because of these two people who had what at the time was a crazy idea. It's really because of them, and we're so grateful. They are alive and well. They've lived in Israel for about 20 years, and they take a great sense of satisfaction hearing these stories of how we've grown and evolved. And what I mean by that is that we have an extensive network across all of our camps. There are different models. None of our camps for disabilities are separate, so we don't have a specialty camp. That would refer to a camp that's only for people with cerebral palsy or only people who are blind, something like that. Most of our camps are really a division within a camp or a fully integrated group within another division. And it really varies by camp. And I would say we've gotten even more inclusive over time. As new camps are set up, they're more fully inclusive. And then what happened was, and even in the 80s, the founders in the picture were approached and people said, what happens when our kids age out? And they had the idea of starting vocational training programs. And again, all of our camps now support people in employment, some within the camp community, some in the local communities. One thing we've learned is that this program and having people in the camp with disabilities, obviously it's beneficial to the campers and to their families. The parents get respite. The kids and young adults learn to become more independent. They develop skills. They're steeped in their Jewish culture. They're fully included. But it's really the other campers in the camp who benefit in ways that you can only imagine in terms of familiarity, in terms of attitude. Many of them go on to careers related, speech therapy, social work, psychology. But more importantly, most go on to being more sensitive community members. They're more patient in the grocery store when somebody with autism has a difficult time, or their employers who hire people with disabilities, or in their churches and their synagogues and in their mosques. They're just more aware of differences. Next slide, please. This just gives you a sense of how our camping movement, how the Tikvah program evolved over time. The program that I mentioned was Ramah, New England. I actually started there in 1984, and it changed my life, and I've kind of never left Jewish camping. And I also work at the last camp, Camp Ramah, Northern California. And we're very proud to say that despite all that pushback I mentioned in the late 60s, Camp Ramah, Northern California did not want to even open its doors until they knew that they would have campers with disabilities. So we've really, really come a very long way. Next slide, please. So not only is camp wonderful in the summer, a typical response to being in camp is, wow, I would trade those 2 months for 10 months, the 2 for 10, if we could just have camp all year round. So this is what camping movements have done. They've tried to find ways to keep campers engaged. This is campers with and without disabilities. It is retreats and reunions in camp, in the local communities. It is a college network, which we call Reshet Ramah, the Ramah network, where people can connect, both virtually these days and also in person. It's Israel trips. I've led a number of trips for people with disabilities. So this is all a lead up. This is all pre-COVID we were doing this. The picture on the right, we have a program called Shabbos is Calling, the Jewish Sabbath. By traditional Jewish law, we don't use technology on the Sabbath, but on Thursday nights or Sundays, we would have a video chat where people across the country, campers who knew each other and staff would sort of have a mini reunion every week to just check in and say hi. So COVID came, camps were canceled 2 years ago, and our directors, our bosses said, you got to do something, camp has to do something. And all the camps began having programs in the local, they began having virtual programs, art projects and scavenger hunts and singing and dancing. And they said, Howard, Maya, you have to think about what to do for the disabilities population. We pulled them. Many of the campers were happy to be included in the activities I just described. But as Maya will tell you in much greater detail, the campers in the vocational training programs were hurting and they were suffering. Their jobs were on hold. So they were losing their vocational skills. They were losing their social contact. And we said, that's where we need to intervene. Let's create a program for that group. And I now turn it over to my colleague, Maya.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Howard. So kind of this shift to virtual that we started for our campers over the age of 18 with disabilities, or actually staff at our camps, was called TikvahNet. So Howard told you all about Tikvah. It was a virtual TikvahNet work. So we've had various versions of our programs up until now, and I'm proud to say we've engaged over 80 alumni, and I think almost 90 at this point in our programs. So as Howard mentioned, we started in the summer of 2020 to move in quickly, get together our ideas and thoughts quickly to see what might work to fill that need. So we started with a more intensive program, 2 times per week, intensive social programs, vocational programs to cover really key skills that parents were worried would be lost and participants wanted to keep up. So the programs occurred in the evenings to accommodate all different time zones. And we're really proud with the diversity of the group that we have engaged and continue to engage. We have participants still in high school in their early 20s, late teens, to participants that were at camp when Howard started at camp and are in their 50s now. So really wide age range. Also wide range of abilities. We have young adults in our programs who are in college, have graduated college, work full-time, or individuals who work part-time or volunteer, or are still figuring out what they want to do and where they want to go, or go to day programs, living at home to living in group homes, or living with friends, or living independently in their own apartments. So a really, really diverse community. And again, also in where they're joining from. We picked the evenings because we have people joining from California to Boston, from Canada to the United States, and people joining from their vacations, people joining from Hawaii because they can't bear to miss an opportunity to join TikvahNet. So in terms of what our topics are and who leads them, actually, I'm going to go back one slide. We have a mix of social, vocational, and some religious programs. So we sometimes have our group leaders who I'll tell you more about in terms of our structure on the next slide. We sometimes have them lead the programs, and sometimes we have guest speakers come in. And we've been really proud to welcome and invite a diverse group of guest speakers, including individuals who employ adults with disabilities. So for example, Walgreens, about their distributing centers, they shared how they employ adults with disabilities, to small businesses, even families that attend our calls, how they started their own businesses in the pandemic to meet the needs for their children. And I'll continue kind of to explain more on the coming slides. So who leads our programs and what is the structure? So our programs range from about an hour to an hour and a half in the evenings, and they're a combination of large and small groups. So we start and we end together in a large group. So like I mentioned, sometimes that's 60 something participants, sometimes 40 something, depending on the evening. And everyone really enjoys seeing each other's faces, saying hello, singing songs together. And then for a more intimate experience, we have group leaders. So around 4 groups that we've got based on our size that take around 10 to 12 participants into groups and have discussion-based topics or lead activities in a really hands-on way. And we've kept these groups consistent from week to week. And it's been so wonderful to see, you know, someone from California with Down syndrome and someone in Boston with Down syndrome meeting each other, coming together and bonding, sometimes over their shared experience of disability, or regardless of diagnoses, many people just bonding over, hey, you've got a disability and you love Vermont, so do I. Or, hey, you do Project Search, which is a transition to adulthood program. I do Project Search on the other side of the country. We both work in hospitals. So really many opportunities to connect and also to reconnect with people you know from your home camps and maybe haven't seen in a decade if you stopped coming to camp a while ago. So like I mentioned before, there's that mixture of social and vocational programs. And a really important thing we've done is we've regularly updated changed and modified our program structures based on feedback. We created these programs to serve the really wonderful adults with disabilities that are part of our remote camps. And we want to hear from them and their families always to make sure that our programs are meeting the needs that they have. So kind of what's the key ingredient? How is this so successful? There's no one kind of answer, but I thought it might be helpful for anyone listening who might be looking to start a program like this, that I think building a sense of community and selecting strong group leaders is really, really key. So one piece was, when we started the program, we kind of divided content up and had content for a more independent group that maybe talked about things on a deeper level, and then content for a group that was maybe less independent and had fewer vocational skills or knowledge. But what we learned as we evolved was mixing those kinds of groups together was wonderful, because you had individuals who were already in college coaching their peers and saying, here's what I did, here's how you can get where I am. Or even some of our participants came as guest speakers to talk about the jobs they have, how they got those jobs. And really, a lot of the feedback we got was enjoying that experience of teaching peers. So that leads me to my next point of our teaching was by no means didactic. It was not a group leader giving a lecture for 30 minutes. It was very, very interactive and very discussion based, often asking probing questions and allowing the group to teach each other and discuss topics, and group leaders sometimes filling in the gaps or adding additional commentary. And as you can see on the slides, I just screenshotted some examples of things we've done. We always start with a little spinning wheel. You can find them easily virtually online, that goes over different questions for the week and has everyone catch up. And here's the example of, when we had Walgreens come in and talk to our participants about opportunities they could have. So what value have our programs brought? So I'm going to talk a little bit about our observations, and then we have got some quotes from participants from the surveys that we've done. So we were able to bring social connection and community during a really isolating time. Weekly, our participants remarked, how important these programs were to them. Some of them were in isolation when they joined. Some of them had COVID when they joined. Some of them weren't able to see family if they lived alone, or if they did see family, they thrived on social interactions and were lacking that. And I think there was this question before COVID of, could virtual matter? Could virtual meet a need? And the answer is yes, absolutely. And a little anecdote I'll share is I think a lot of the participants truly are friends with each other who have never met before. Some of them will get each other's contact information in FaceTime. Or a conference we just had, a participant who didn't know anybody going remarked, oh, well, I know them from TikvahNet. I know them from our virtual program, so I'm fine. Like, all my friends are there, even though they'd never met in person. It also provided an opportunity to stay active and continue with hobbies that you have during COVID. So in addition to the social, vocational, and religious programs, some of those social programs included cooking, art. We also welcomed expert fitness studios to teach accessible fitness classes to keep people active. And for some participants, it provided respite opportunities for their parents if they were living at home, just that window of time where they were doing a structured, valuable program at a time when parents were caregivers for more than they might usually be if their child went to work. There was also opportunities, like I mentioned, for formal and informal mentorship. So many of our participants are essential workers. They bonded over the fact that they were still working during COVID and were maybe a bit scared at the grocery store at their jobs, but it's okay because they're doing something important, reminding each other to get their boosters or asking people to join other programs they have going on virtually. What have participants and parents said about TikvahNet? So I'm just going to leave this slide up for a second and let people read. But I think that these excerpts and comments just point to a lot of what I've said already, that these programs served a really valuable purpose and continue to serve a really valuable purpose. So yeah, feeling like they're part of something, teaching things, respite for caregivers, and it was a professional, serious environment. It's fun, but Participants have the opportunity to take turns, participate in real world topics, and many that maybe their parents or people who knew them from their home camps didn't expect them to engage professionally. They rose to the occasion. So yeah, these are just a few excerpts, but we've got so many more. And what skills have developed at our programs? So I started talking about this already, but some we've summarized here. We've seen improvements for our participants in their ability to take turns in a virtual setting, initiate positive interactions. We also focused a lot on self-advocacy, social communication skills, healthy relationships, consent, and meeting that religious need. We lit Hanukkah candles together. We celebrated Rosh Hashanah, our Jewish New Year. We did Passover programs, all those Jewish holidays when we're year round, we make sure that we have these celebrations together. In terms of vocational skills, it would take a whole presentation just to go over all the different topics we've done over the past almost 2 years, year and a half. But we focused on job interviews, creating resumes, many activities of daily living. So cooking, laundry, managing our time, navigating transportation, managing money, and safely managing social media and virtual interactions. So how have we expanded beyond TikvahNet, and where are we going next? So we've already, started to expand beyond our TikvahNet 2 times per month programs. We've been including staff with disabilities in all our year-round programming opportunities. So just a few days ago, when I'm recording this, we had a conference that we included our adults and staff with disabilities for the first time as having a track to build vocational skills. We've also started to consult experts to improve accessibility of things like our website, update our terminology to be most consistent. And we also are going to begin to modify our own TikvahNet programs and continue to get feedback. For example, right now, all our participants have done the same programs. Do we want to make hobby groups? Do some people want to study Torah or the Bible, or other people do art or fitness? And when safe, we would love to expand to in-person programs and conferences. So what lessons have we learned that you can apply to your virtual programming? So first, I think that never underestimate what an idea you have can do, because we really weren't sure about what this virtual thing would be when we started. And I think now it's going to be a permanent part of our year-round programming. That online friendships are real and provide real, wonderful connection and opportunity. And also that from a practical perspective, virtual programming, the costs are fairly low for the organization to run a platform via Zoom, to hire a team to run these programs. And our programs, I don't think I mentioned this before, but they're free to all our participants always. So it really, compared to maybe in person where you're renting space or buying food, virtual can happen quite quickly, serve people from all over the country and multiple countries, and meet a really important need. So I think I'll turn it back to Howard if you wanted to add a final lesson or two or any of your takeaways before we finish up.
Oh, thank you, Maya. Well, I'm delighted to present, to share a little bit about our year-round programming. I'll be giving some other presentations both virtually and at the conference. But I guess if we could be of assistance, as you can hear, we're both very passionate about this. We kind of jumped in, and we've just seen so many, everyone talks about silver linings that came as a result of the pandemic, and this is certainly one of them. And just watching the group, it continues to have a life of its own. And our national organization really is owning this, and we'll continue to fund it, even though it's, as Maya said, it's not very costly. And we're happy to update you over time. So thank you so much for attending, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yes, thanks. And feel free to contact us. Our information is right below.